almost like, boy, don't be asking questions like that. Don't you get in trouble. But Dr. King and Rosa Parks and others inspired me to get in trouble, to get in the way. And I've been getting in the way and getting in trouble ever since.
I have the pleasure to present to this great audience Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, Brother John Lewis.
We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen. We're tired of seeing our people locked up in jail over and over again. How long can we be patient? We do not want to go to jail, but we will go to jail if this is a price we must pay for love, brotherhood, and true peace. I appeal to all of you to get in this great revolution that is sweeping this nation. Until the revolution of 1776 is complete, we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today.
I see the spirit of John Lewis today in the streets.
Wake up, America, wake up.
From the Edmund Pettus Bridge to the halls of Congress, the boy from Troy never stopped making
good trouble.
Necessary trouble.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contrarians YouTube live special on Good Trouble, a day of mobilization across the United States and of remembering the spirit of the wonderful John Lewis. I'm Norm Eisen. I'm the publisher of The Contrarian.
And I'm Katie Phang. I'm one of the senior advisors for State Democracy Defenders, and I am thrilled to be here with Norm Eisen on such a special day. We're so grateful for the privilege of your time, always grateful for the support that you're providing the Contrarian, and we're really rattling cages with the work that we're doing, and we figured what a fantastic day to be able to share that sentiment with all of you.
And we're going to be bringing you special guest stars on this 1 hour celebration of today's huge day of Good Trouble mobilization, over 1,600 events all over the country, and celebrating the memory and the legacy of John Lewis with action. We're very fortunate. I was lucky to be mentored by Representative Lewis, and we're going to have folks with us today who have worked with him and some of the leading analysts and commentators on democracy today. We'd like to bring in our friends. We're very lucky to have with us Ashley Etienne and Jim Acosta. They're going to help anchor the show with us. Ashley, Jim, welcome.
Listen,
Thank you.
Sorry, Norm.
Go ahead, Katie.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody who's tuning in knows that Ashley Etienne is somebody in the know. She's currently the owner and co-founder of Etienne and Sate. She provides strategic and crisis comms to CEOs. But before that, she was providing some strategic comms to not only Nancy Pelosi, but President Obama, as well as Vice President and should have been President Kamala Harris. And Jim Acosta really doesn't need an introduction. I think, Jim, you and I are kind of getting into our own version of Good Trouble in independent media. But Jim definitely struck out on his own, and he's kicking ass right now in independent media on Substack and on other platforms. So I'm grateful that we have also the privilege of the time of Ashley Etienne and Jim Acosta with me and Norm and with all of you.
And with that, we'll bring in our first special guest. He's here with us. He's a leader in speaking out about what's going on in our country, the fight for democracy, and really a pathbreaker in independent media, our friend Brian Tyler Cohen. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you with us. Brian, you have been on the cutting edge of what we think of as the spirit of John Lewis, because you were an early one to speak out about the rising tide of authoritarianism in our country. And as we reflect on the legacy of Representative Lewis and on the events, over 1,600 events today, we thought we'd start by asking you, give us a snapshot. Where do you think we are as a democracy in living up to our ideals and in fighting back in the best tradition of good trouble of John Lewis?
Well, look, I first of all, I want to say that I'm in good company here in terms of folks who are looking to fight back. So if I was early, I was early alongside all of you. I can't sugarcoat it right now in terms of the state of play in our democracy, but there is a silver lining. For as bad as things seem, there is, I think, a sense that what we need to do is actually fight back in a way that Democrats have not been willing or able to fight back in the past. And I think that sense has finally taken over the party. And I say the party, but it's really the pro-democracy faction of Americans more broadly. And that's been absent for as long as I can remember, even before things seemed as bad as they did right now. I wanted Democrats to be able to fight back in a much stronger way than they were willing to do. They wouldn't do it then. And so the silver lining of being in this moment is that there is this newfound sense of, okay, what do we have to do to actually fight back, to actually let people know that we're willing to take it to the mat for them and to combat a Republican Party that has relied on the weakness and impotence of their opposition for so long. And so now, look, I've tried to use my platform to elevate people who are willing to fight, and I hope that for those who aren't, that's your prerogative. But I do hope that we see a generation of Democrats come up behind them that are willing to pick up the reins where their predecessors left off. So I think the good part in all of this is that we are seeing some sense of a recognition of where we're at right now and what it takes to fight back.
Brian, it's Katie. I want to ask, how important is it for you in your own measure of being activated, engaged, to be able to lean into this independent media space? Jim and I have dove into that alongside you, but you were one of the original pioneers of understanding that perhaps traditional legacy media isn't the place for people to be able to have the freedom to express their opposition, to be able to fight back against this incredibly fascist moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I will say the power of independent media and the way that our voices have all been democratized has been essential in this new sense of what the Democratic Party should be and could be. Without that, I mean, if we were to rely solely on legacy media outlets and with their over-reliance on kind of protecting the status quo, doing both sidesism, there would be no change, or there would be no impetus for change that we see right now. And so because we have all of these voices, because you have because I'm lucky enough to have an opportunity to speak to folks, I can share my voice and hopefully push not only elected officials, but maybe even folks in legacy media who recognize, okay, maybe I'm not where the rest of the country is. I have the opportunity to do that now. And I know that a lot of other folks, I know that you all have been leaders in doing exactly that. So again, grateful for all of your voices in this fight. But yeah, without independent media, this would not be happening right now.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, I mean, to me, Brian, I think you have it exactly right. And the world that we're in right now is not so much a Democrat versus Republican world or left versus right world. It's pro-democracy versus anti-democracy versus autocracy and authoritarianism. And Norm and Katie and I have these conversations all the time, and Ashley, you as well. I mean, just look at the headlines today. Donald Trump wants to put his former defense attorney in a position where he would be a federal judge and potentially on the path to becoming a Supreme Court justice. I mean, give me a break. What is going on with our democracy when that's happening? And you mentioned independent media versus legacy media. I'm very worried about what's happening with public broadcasting. Look at what Trump and the Republicans are doing, going after public broadcasting, PBS and NPR, with a meat axe. My God, how are some of these stations going to survive across the country in a lot of these far-flung places if they lose $1 billion in funding? We're talking about maybe 1 in 5 NPR stations around the country may have to shut down or be severely compromised. And so, Brian, I think, this is a moment for independent media. And I guess my question is how do we better harness the power of independent media so it could have, I call it a NATO alliance for the truth, so we're all sort of all marching in one direction, fighting for truth and democracy.
It's such a good question, and it's what I've been focused on for a long time. there is a sense of the fact that everybody on the left, and I'll use the left broadly. I'll make that caveat moving forward, so we don't have to feel like it's like the Democrats. We'll say, when I say the left, it's like the pro-democracy faction, but the left falls victim so often to the right's deliberate strategy of, this is the Steve Bannon model, flooding the zone with shit. And they know that if they can throw 10 things at the wall, that you'll have Democrats scatter in 10 different directions. And so I think what's going to be crucial moving forward is recognizing where to take the bait, where not to take the bait, and how to best coordinate our messaging. I've been working on that with a lot of creators that I work with right now. And I think that more broadly, that is going to be what helps us moving forward. Like in this instance, you see the extent to which Donald Trump doesn't want to talk about Epstein. And so what has he done to try and distract us? Man, he's threatened to denaturalize Rosie O'Donnell. He's talked about Coca-Cola getting cane sugar, like whatever this guy can think of to fart out.
Every day it's something else.
Every day it's something else.
Greenland. He's going to invade Canada. None of it's for real.
Correct.
I like Mexican Coke, but give me a break.
Yeah, I mean, I like Mexican Coke too, but not to the detriment of talking about the crimes that this president is trying to cover up. Yeah. So I think our ability to be able to organize and coordinate better, which is something that the right has been doing for a long time, is going to be crucial moving forward. And luckily, the pro-democracy ecosystem, with all of you, everyone working together, and there not being a scarcity mentality, I think is going to be the most important thing. That there is enough attention to go around, that we're not competitors with each other, but rather that we're all working together in a complementary fashion so that we can make sure that folks are better informed, that politics is accessible, and that we're fighting back against the abuses of this Republican Party.
Hey, Brian, this is Ashley. I just wanted to jump in really quickly. So you seem more optimistic about how Democrats are performing than most everybody. I mean, I've been incredibly critical of Democrats. I ran the opposition for Pelosi and Trump 1.0. I remember when she brought me into her office from the White House and said, what's the framework for attacking and undermining Donald Trump? The first response to that was his threat to American democracy. So we've been on that messaging framework for a long time. We won 40 seats, laid the foundation for Joe Biden, did the first impeachment. I'm just curious, what gives you so much hope about what Democrats are doing differently now than we've done in the past? I mean, you've had somebody like President Obama just say just days ago that Democrats need to be more aggressive, need to lean in and not be apologetic, demonstrate another level of courage. Tell me what you're seeing that most of us aren't really seeing right now that gives you hope.
Yeah. So what gives me the most hope at this point is the fact that we have folks who are, I think, offering up what I would consider generational change moving forward. In terms of the slate of Democrats that we have right now, I think some folks understand it, and we are seeing people go to bat for what I think we should be doing, which is fighting harder. What gives me hope mostly is this new bench of Democrats that I do think is going to represent generational change in 26, and I do believe that given what the Republicans have done thus far, that 2026 will look very similar to what 2018 looked like, and really what the ecosystem is turning into. Again, I don't think that change is going to come from Democrats in Congress. The change is not going to come from Democrats in the Senate. Change is going to come from the voices that people are actually listening to, and that's happening online. I mean, just looking on TikTok or on Instagram or on YouTube, that's where people get their news. That's where they inform their political ideologies. Politics is downstream of culture. We're all going to be the voices that reach people first. I'm less concerned with what the Democrats in the House or the Senate are doing, and frankly, I don't think that what the Democrats in the House and Senate are doing is going to be really the first touches that Americans get. It's going to be on all of us to be the messengers for what's going on. That's what gives me hope. Again, like I do think that a best case scenario, we see a generation of Democrats who get elected in 2026, who are fighters, who are charismatic, who understand the media environment that we're living in, and that's going to be great. But at this point, my mentality is that the onus is certainly on us and not our elected officials to be the first line of attack against what the Republicans are doing now.
Absolutely.
Brian Tyler Cohen, thank you for leading the way, making good trouble virtually on social media. You let us all onto this medium, but we're here now in force, including at the Contrarian. And on the topic of good trouble, there's nobody who exemplifies that more than our next guest. He's such a heir of the legacy of John Lewis that he actually has Congressman Lewis's furniture in his office. He's going to show us that. I want to welcome Congressman, ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, my friend for more than 30 years, like me, mentored by John Lewis, Jamie Raskin. Welcome, Jamie.
Hello, Norm and Katie and Ashley and Jim. Hello, everybody. Congratulations, I think, on your new show or your new location or venue. This is awesome. And this is indeed John's table and his furniture that was bequeathed to me, and I'm really honored to have it. So you come to my office, we're doing nothing but making good trouble all day long here in the spirit and the memory of the great John Lewis. So thanks for what you guys are doing, and it was great to listen in to Brian Tyler Cohen, and I agreed so much with with what he had to say there. We're in the fight of our lives every day. We've got to stop all the lamentations and the bewailing and the bemoaning. I mean, it's hard to fight fascists and it's hard to fight authoritarians, and we got to stick together and defend each other and support each other through this process. And it's not a competition between us to see, who can get more pins or labels, stuck to them in this process. Like, that's not what it's about. So we will become a movement when we are all working together towards that common goal. But I really think we're there. I was out there on All Kings Day. I thought about John Lewis. I was there with Martin Luther King III. I was there with Tim Snyder in Philadelphia. And it was just extraordinary to see what was happening in that great city, the uprising of, tens of thousands of people in the rain coming out to say, no, we're not going to accept monarchy or dictatorship or theocracy. We're not going to accept an onslaught against federal workers. We're not going to accept destruction of our freedom. So I think we're there. And I think that Brian's point is completely right. I mean, long before John Lewis ever dreamed of going to Congress, he was a leader. And he was an activist who put his body and his mind and his heart in the struggle and in the pathway, blocking injustice and oppression. And that's what we've all got to do.
Jamie, tell us how you first met John. We're going to trade stories of John tonight. He would be so proud of us, not just on this screen, the thousands who are watching. 1,600 events today to make good trouble and commemorate him, cities large and small. How did you first meet him, Jamie?
Well, let's see. I mean, I looked up to him forever. I think the first time I spoke to him actually was when he was running for Congress, and I was in law school, and I called him up to see if he could come up and we could have a fundraiser for him. He wasn't able to come, but we had a fundraiser and sent him some money. But that was in the days before Zoom and internet and all that. So I was a little, discombobulated. I'm actually just going to check my phone quickly to see whether I can actually pull up the date when I first went to see him. But what happened is when I was running for Congress, one of my close friends and constituents named Debbie Spielberg worked for John. And I was a state senator in Maryland, and she said, you guys are going to really hit it off famously. And she brought me down to his office. And it was, I suppose we sat at this very desk. It was just so moving to have him talk about his career and what he had done. And then he asked me what kinds of things I was working on in the Maryland Senate and what I would do in Congress. And we took some pictures and he supported me. And then when I got to Congress, he called me up immediately. And, I love nothing more than being able to go on the House floor and sit next to him and hear him talk. And
Yeah, so true.
He's a beautiful man.
So true.
Congressman Raskin, it's Katie Phang. It's always so good to see you. As you know, today is Good Trouble Lives On Day. There are 1,600 plus protests going on as we meet right now live on YouTube. We saw some good trouble today, and it was inspiring to see some Democrats say, not on our watch. Rules have to be followed. The rule of law has to be adhered to. During that Emile Beauvais issue today, your thoughts about that type of unifying good trouble that we're seeing from Dems?
Look, Emile Beauvais is the perfect embodiment of the legal culture of the Trump movement. I mean, here's a guy who could not bring himself to say that the Constitution prevents you from running for a third term if you've served 2 terms. Here's a guy who could not call what happened on January 6th a violent insurrection. He could not bring himself to say that Joe Biden won in 2020, an election that he won by more than 7 million votes in the popular election, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. He could not bring himself to say that. So this is an entire party now that is constituted in a tissue of fraud and deception and malice. And the great thing is it's starting to come apart over this Epstein issue of all things, because I guess, members of a cult wake up one day and then they realize that their savior is a false prophet and has been ripping them off and lying to them from the beginning. So let's hope that this is beginning. This is the beginning of these people being on a path just to restoration of their common sense and their ability to connect with the real world. But Beauvais is the wrong direction for them to be going in. Obviously, Trump would love to have a guy like that on the Supreme Court. I mean, they would never put someone on the court who's actually interested in the Constitution or the rule of law, whether, the most progressive like Brennan or Marshall, or even a conservative like Scalia, because he would be unpredictable. He wouldn't just follow orders. All they want is people who will follow orders when Donald Trump tells them what to do. And those are the judges who now populate the Trump part of the bench. And even some of the ones that he put on in the first administration are way too legalistic for him. They're way too rule oriented. I think, 6 or 7 of them have ruled against him in all of the appalling things that he's been doing, like purporting to strip birthright citizenship away from, millions of people potentially, or just sacking tens of thousands of federal workers who are in a probationary status, as if probation means you knocked over a gas station, when probation just means you were just hired or you've just been promoted because you had superior evaluations. But anyway, they don't even like those judges anymore. They want to impeach those judges if they don't do everything Donald Trump tells them to do.
And Congressman, I mean, you mentioned the Epstein story. I have to ask you about that. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal just tonight saying that Donald Trump is threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal over this story. That apparently, he was asked by Ghislaine Maxwell to send a letter, write a letter about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, I guess for Epstein's 50th birthday. And it's a pretty, I don't want to get into all the sordid details of it, but they're pretty sordid. But there's a lot of people out there who are just wondering, is there really going to be any accountability for Donald Trump in all of this? Because for Pete's sake, I mean, he is, to me, the question is not only what did the president know, when did he know it? It's what did the president do and when did he do it?
Yeah.
And how do you get to the truth in all this?
Well, look, I know that is the cause of so much frustration for so many people. And oftentimes I share that. It's like, when will he be held accountable? Right.
Yeah.
Now, in truth, the guy has been impeached twice by the U.S. House of Representatives. He's an adjudicated sexual assailant in New York City. He's had to pay out tens, maybe hundreds of millions. I'm sure Norm would know the number since he's responsible for a lot of it. He's had to pay all this money.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the subpoena that will be arriving tomorrow morning, Jamie.
What's the law firm again, Norm?
Give him hell. Keep going. But I guess the point I'm making is, satisfaction for us is not so much about how much rightful punishment can be inflicted on Donald Trump. He's obviously got an army of lawyers, a huge bank account inflated with all his corrupt crypto schemes right now. For us, victory is going to be to put Donald Trump and MAGA behind us and to restore the trajectory of democracy and freedom in America. That's real victory. So I'm with you. It would be sweet to know that he would actually be held accountable for a couple of his crimes that he's committed. Yeah. But in truth, he's going to have to reckon with his maker. We've got to reckon with the future of America for our kids and our grandchildren. And so that's where our focus has got to be.
I couldn't agree with you more, Congressman. I really admire not only your intellect, but your energy and your commitment to the principles that this nation has been grounded in. I'm curious, though, you laid out a case which we've been arguing for almost a decade now about Donald Trump, his threats, the sort of slow walk towards dictatorship, authoritarianism, all of these things. Why do you think the American people aren't buying it? I mean, it just sort of is beyond me. What do you think they're missing? Is it something we're not doing? We're not articulating sufficiently, adequately? Tell me what's going on in the minds of the American people that they seem to not care about this. I mean, to some degree, democracy was the biggest loser in November. We've been making this case and people know full well, they saw it with their own eyes and they voted for the guy. Explain it to me.
Thank you, Ashley. It's really good to see you. And
yeah, good to see you too. I miss you.
Yeah. But look, we have to defend not just democracy, which seems like an abstract principle or value, but the concrete achievements, programmatic achievements of democracy, like Medicaid, and they're about to throw 17 million people off of Medicaid. They just voted to do it. Like Medicare, like Social Security. These are the concrete accomplishments of democratic movements in our history. So why aren't people seeing it? I mean, that's a tough question. I mean, I guess I have two sorts of responses to it. One is it has always been a struggle between the forces of democracy and freedom and the forces of dictatorship and authoritarianism and theocracy and tyranny. I'm reading this great book right now you guys have got to check out called The First Civil War. It's about the American Revolution by H.W. Brands, the Texas historian. But he says, we like to think that everybody here was unified in saying, let's overthrow King George and the British Empire. But in fact, the country was split right down the middle. That's why Ben Franklin's son, who was the colonial governor of New Jersey, ended up in jail, right? The country was split over it. Half the people running around saying, you can't beat the greatest military empire of all time. You can't disentangle church and state, right? The church belongs to the government, and the government will tell everybody, where they're going to go to church and who they're going to pray to and so on. You can't do all these crazy things you Enlightenment liberals are talking about, but half the country said, no, let's give it a try. Let's pledge to each other our property, our sacred honor, our lives, in the belief that we can create a government that rests on the consent of the governed and the unalienable rights of the people, like liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and the proposition, the determination that all people are created equal, right? So it's always been a struggle, and it's a struggle today.
Yeah.
Jefferson and Madison and Frederick Douglass and John Lewis would recognize exactly what we're going through. They wouldn't be saying, oh my God, why are we so why are we such victims of circumstance that we've got to deal with Donald Trump? This is our opportunity to go out every single day and fight for everything we believe in, and to vindicate and redeem the work of John Lewis and Bob Moses and Ivan O'Donnellson and the other people in SNCC, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the LGBTQ movement, the labor movement, the human rights movement, all the civilizing movements of our history that John Lewis so embodied and personified. It's our turn. When I was in Philadelphia, I said, you know what? None of us is ever going to be a founding father in the 18th century, but all of us can be founding fighters in the 21st century. That's who we are. A whole new generation of fighters.
Amen. Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely.
That is the motto.
See why I love him, Norm?
That is the motto of the Contrarian here on YouTube. We're founding fighters, and the spirit that runs through my co-hosts, our first guest, Brian Tyler Cohen, and our wonderful friend, Congressman Jamie Raskin, is going to see us through this trying moment. Jamie, thanks for being with us. We love you.
Yes.
You're going to go off and make some good trouble on the House floor. Brother Jim Acosta out here on the frontiers of being truthful.
Yes, sir.
Truthful, not neutral. That's another one of our mottos at the Contrarian. He's going to go do some good trouble himself. But stay tuned, friends. Ashley, Etienne, and I are now going to tell you our favorite John Lewis stories because he took us both under his wing. Bye, Jamie.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, Jim.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jim.
Real honor to be with you guys. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Bye, Jim.
Thanks,
Good
Jim.
seeing you.
All the best. All the best to all.
I'm very curious what's going to happen to the boxes when Jim goes out there. Oh, look, we got it. We gotta keep it
No more Hollywood
centered.
Squares, Norm. No more Hollywood
Gotta
Squares.
keep it centered, Katie. I
I'm
can't
trying
see
to. I'm
your
trying
ear.
to. Switch it over. Okay, there you go.
Ashley, you and I had the privilege of working closely with Congressman Lewis, and he loved you. He loved Ashley. He loved her fighting spirit. Actually, Raskin, me, Ashley, and John all came together on the first impeachment of Donald Trump. And I'm going to I'll save one story for later, but I'm going to tell one of another occasion with John. John was not an easy sell on the impeachment. Neither was my friend Ashley. I wrote a whole book in which she's one of the stars. And part of the reason that Ashley and Congressman Lewis were not super hyped when I arrived in January 2019 to impeach Donald Trump was because Nancy Pelosi was not enthusiastic. And John, of course, was a tremendous ally of Pelosi's, believed in Pelosi's leadership. And Ashley was one of the leaders in Pelosi world. So I worked on John, though. We had an old friendship, and he trusted me. We had worked on stuff before, and I would go see him. And it just like Jamie says, it's like history come to life. It would be like Ashley, when you and I were working in the White House. It's as if we could walk down the West Wing and sit with George Washington.
Yeah,
because John Lewis was that founding fighter. So I found any excuse. Finally, in the fall, when the evidence of the Ukraine whistleblower and Donald Trump shaking down the president of Ukraine, the brave Vladimir Zelensky, when that came out, that was too much. And the dam broke and the impossible happened. And we started to get critical mass for impeachment. And I went to see John. I said, John, is the time right? Will you support the impeachment now? And he said to me, Norm, with a steely grip, he grabbed my arm. He squeezed my arm. You know what I'm talking about, Ashley? He squeezed my arm.
I'm laughing, right?
He said, Norm, yes, I'll support, but I want you to impeach him with love. And I said, yes, I will impeach Donald Trump with love. And then I thought, what does that mean to impeach somebody with love? And I realized what he meant was, and we talked about it on the floor later, what he meant was do it out of love for the Constitution.
Yeah.
Do it out of love for this country.
Yeah.
Do it out of love for the vision. Never in John Lewis's lifetime, never in any of our lifetimes will the vision of America be perfected, but we can make it better. And he was fighting for all our rights with love for the country, not with a single ounce of hate. So that is one of my favorite John Lewis stories. What about you, Ashley Etienne?
So to your point about him being filled with love and the manifestation of love, I traveled with the Congressional Black Caucus and Speaker Pelosi on a trip to Ghana. It was my first time to the continent. And it by far was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. During that time we were there, imagine it, it's a year of return. It's the 400th anniversary of slaves arriving in Virginia. And so we're all together. Mr. Lewis there, everyone's there. And President Trump at the time made these vile statements about Mr. Cummings. And you know how much I love Mr. Cummings. That was, not only a former boss, but a spiritual mentor to me, everything. And he started talking about Baltimore. So, the speaker got hot about that, right? Like everybody's on fire. What do we do in this moment? It became a real intense exchange between all the members of the CBC. And I was fortunate enough to be in the room. And no one has the right answer because, we're trying to figure this out in real time. And this is the first time we've ever seen a president of the United States say such vile, race baiting things. And here we are again on the continent. And so Mr. Lewis in that moment steps up, and I won't say what he said, but it was his sort of quiet power and his steely nature. And he said to us, looked us all in our face and said, "This too shall pass." And we have to know that this too shall pass. And I couldn't help myself but get emotional because I'm looking at this icon, this legend, and thinking to myself, here he is. I don't know how old he was at the time. It had to be at least 70 years old. And his work still isn't done. Much of that work is being reversed, and he's still alive. And he hasn't had this whole experience all over again. And I just became emotional about that. Fast forward, we're on the plane going back home, and Pelosi has this tradition of asking everyone to say their highlight of the trip. I stood up, got emotional, and made the point that it was so, moving to be on the continent for the first time with the titans of the CBC, the conscience of the Congress, from Mr. Lewis to the youngest Ilhan Omar, and how beautiful that was. And I just couldn't help. I could barely get the words out. And you know what Mr. Lewis did? He came to the back of the plane, hugged me, and he said simply, "Thank you." And I'm thinking to myself, like, my mind is blown. Like, is Mr. Lewis thanking me for thanking him for his legacy and what he's represented globally around the world? Freedom, justice, democracy. So for me, in that moment, I realized that this man is the true definition of a servant leader. And that's what we need in this nation. That's what made him such a powerful figure. So that's my favorite John Lewis.
Beautiful.
Story. Yes.
Beautiful.
And in the vein of what we have just heard from Ashley and from Norm, we're introducing, in my mind, another true servant leader, and that's Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager from the great state of California. When we talk about fighters, Congresswoman, we're talking about you because you have brought some authenticity that is long overdue in the DC space. You've now heard stories from Norm, Congressman Jamie Raskin, as well as our Ashley Etienne here. Congresswoman, talk about why it's important to channel that level of good trouble that John Lewis inspired so many. I feel like we've got to pick up that spark again. And I feel like now it's now or never for Americans to be able to feel that energy once again.
Amen, Queen. First of all, I just have to say how warm it is just to be here listening to each of you sharing your stories about John Lewis. I mean, he's one of the reasons why I decided to run for Congress. I mean, who would not want to stand on the shoulders, my God, and just be part of this enormous shadow of greatness and love and compassion? Yesterday we had our CBC caucus meeting. We have it every Wednesday. You have to make sure that you don't eat too much so that you don't get into a food coma. And we had the former chief of staff of Congressman John Lewis come. He shared his biography, and he talked about this man who did every single thing with love, how he worked with Democrats, how he worked with Republicans, how he managed his way through conflict and incredibly perilous moments while in Congress. And he always did it with such an open heart, and how gracious he was. And they talked about how emotional it was for them to have to close down his office, because every single thing that they touched, there was a story that was attached to people and struggle and love and humanity. And it was an incredible reminder that in this polarized, divisive space that we're in now, with folks who I think really do have evil in their hearts. I mean, it is pernicious and dangerous to take food out of the mouths of babes, right? To end programs that are curing or preventing malaria, that are shutting down opportunities for folks to get an education, that are shutting down programs that are keeping folks from being abused by their partners. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that's going to ravage our country and put us in harm's way because of what is happening. Absolutely. And And I was thinking, and I was like, yeah, I'm full of rage. I'm gonna go handle this business, And then I was listening to him talk about John Lewis, and it calmed me.
Yeah.
And it reminded me that there are other ways to channel this anger, ways that he would have done that were civil, that were rooted in compassion, that still allowed you to speak truth to justice, and that still would allow you to win. So you got me thinking about that. CBC did our special order hour on Monday, and a lot of members came and talked and shared quotes that were, John Lewis quotes, and Speaker Emerita Pelosi came and she was emotional. Clyburn said that he couldn't join that evening because it made him too emotional. And then in CBC, he started sharing stories about John Lewis. And I swear to God, I felt like I was a kindergartner in school getting a history lesson. And so that's what I think today is about. And that's what remembering John Lewis should be about, showing us all kinds of ways that we can participate in resistance, in disobedience, stay true to our hearts, our gods, this Constitution, democracy, fight for folks that are actually fighting against you. There is so much power in that.
Absolutely.
Congresswoman, one of the highlights of this, and it is what we try to do here in the Contrarian family, is to have honest talk. We're fighters, but we're first fighters, but we do it with love. One of the highlights that I'm going to remember from tonight, y'all can't see this, you just see the 4 boxes now, but we can see the guests as they come into the green room. And I could see how much the Congresswoman was enjoying the prior conversation, and it made me feel good. It was a representation of our audience. Congresswoman, you're from California. Some of these 1,600 Good Trouble events, Good Trouble lives on. They are all over the great state of California, where I'm from also. And can you reflect on what it means to the spirit of John Lewis that we've had hands off, we've had no kings. Now, as a tribute to him today, July 17th, we have Good Trouble lives on. What is the meaning of millions of Americans turning out all over our country in this time of peril, but also opportunity?
Yeah, keep talking about that, brother. I mean, No King's Day, we had, thousands of events happening across the country. We've got the same thing happening today. It reminds me of one of his quotes, right? It's not who wins, it's not who's right, it's about what is right, and that never changes. And so folks are out in the streets marching because we know what is right. And what's not right is cutting educational programs, getting rid of PEPFAR, taking money out of the pockets of our farmers, dismantling things like the State Department and USAID because for some odd reason, you actually don't care about diplomacy or global peace. It's like what's not right is cutting healthcare so that tens of millions of folks will be cut off of Medicaid. And you know what? Even if you're not on Medicaid, you're going to be affected. What's not right is firing Elmo and the Cookie Monster and Big Bird, who have educated our young people and have taught us about cultural diversity. My God, how much strength is it in cultural diversity? You talk to any college a president who will tell you that their school is great because of how diverse it is. What's not right is shutting off all of our economic engines and making us less competitive. And so folks out in the streets are talking about all of those things. And they're saying, we're not going to be silent. And we know that you may knock us down with some crazy executive order. And we know that we're going to have to get back up and do another protest. We're going to have to file another lawsuit. We're going to have to take your orange behind back to court. We are going to do it because we love this country. That's what today is about. And that's what John Lewis is about. And trust, what he was saying was, don't lie down and get beat up. Stand up, speak up. Even if you get knocked down, get back up. Use the law, use humanity. Because I'm going to tell you something, Norman, all y'all know this. These town halls across the country, folks don't want to hear JD Vance talk about border and immigration and the wrong people coming here. They're asking about their student loans. They're asking about Medicaid. That's what getting into good trouble is all about. Breaking through the nonsense and the distraction and really saying, hey, I'm hurting and my neighbor is hurting. And if my neighbor is hurting, that might make me less safe. So what are you going to do about all of us? That's what we're talking about. That's what John Lewis stood for. And we have to keep doing it through 26 and 28 and beyond.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. I will say I have enjoyed hearing you, listening to you, because you have such a clarity to what you say and your message, and it just really breaks through in a way that I think everyone should model, if that makes any sense. But I want to get back to your point about Mr. Lewis, which I fundamentally agree. I mean, he crossed Edmund Pettus Bridge with nothing more than conviction and a backpack. And he got knocked down, but got back up, to your point. What do you say to Black women who are just exhausted? We know better than anyone else about getting knocked down, getting back up, from, Tubman to Ida B. Wells to Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Right now, we're feeling a little disillusioned and exhausted. We've always operated not in a sense of our self-interest, but the collective interest that you just talked about. So what is your message to Black women in this moment who are just feeling like they've had enough?
Yes, I feel that, Queen. And I will tell my Black sisters, take your rest, because we know that even when Black women are resting, they are still working. We might be sipping our tea, we might be getting our nails done, but we are thinking about how to protect our community, the teachers, our men, our children, the nurses in our community, our Planned Parenthoods, our community clinics. We're still thinking about that. And you know what else we're doing? We're on the low key checking in on our allies, our brown sisters and brothers, our Asian sisters and brothers, our immigrant sisters and brothers, our folks from the Caribbean. So I'm gonna say, hey, Black women, y'all ain't got to be all loud and doing all that like folks are used to seeing us be. But it doesn't mean that we're not handling our business. And we know that when, white folks get a cold, Black folks get a pneumonia. And we're not trying to stay sick. This has been a moment where all of our eyes have been opened, right? To how scared people are, how insecure people are about color, about sharing. And so I think we all have a collective responsibility to let folks know that we can all live in this country. We can all coexist. Maybe it's more like a salad than a gumbo. We're not trying to erase your identity or who you are. So I believe that Black women are doing this because I'm in conversations all the time with Black women, as are you, Ashley.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
We're not saying look, too many people of us have died. Okay, too many of us have stories about folks being slaves or stories of coming over here. I tell people now that all of these ICE immigration raids remind me of human trafficking and 12 years a slave, and people coming to snatch you from a free place into a slave
for your
place.
papers. Yes, absolutely.
Come on now, masked up, separating our families. So we have an acute understanding of what's going on, and we are not a community that will ever turn our back on injustice that is happening to someone else. So trust and believe Black women are here. We're quiet, but we're working.
Amen.
We're so pleased to have you as part of our celebration. We can see that you're making your voice heard. We love it. It's inspiring to us.
Yeah.
And speaking of people showing up and speaking out, we want to share with everybody now some of the footage of the over 1,600 mobilization events all across our country, from the Congresswoman's great state of California, from the big cities all the way to the little towns and small hamlets, coast to coast. Let's go to the tape.
Thanks, Congresswoman.
Thanks, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Love y'all. Thank you for doing this.
Be well.
Thank you. So, Norm, what we're seeing right now are these protests. They're all over. This is obviously down the street from us in Washington, D.C.
Yes, indeed, Katie. And you can see the people are turning out. We had hands off. We had no kings. And now we have good trouble. And we thought we would start by showing you some footage. Of course, this is the place where America needs to stand up and speak out. We need to be in the streets peacefully, lawfully, and vigorously.
You know, Norm and Katie, what I appreciate about all of these marches is the diversity of the coalition that we're seeing on the ground. You have people from all walks of the country, every area of the country, every socioeconomic status, name it, choose it, every affiliation coming together and marching in the streets for freedom, democracy, and really to push back against this president's agenda. It is encouraging in that respect that we see all types of Americans coming together in the interest of protecting the founding principles of this nation.
Just like our beautiful tapestry of contrarians. We represent every different part of our society. And here we've gone from DC to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, one of the key states in the blue wall. You see that footage? It's kind of like a brick in the blue wall there of the people turning out in Harrisburg. Pennsylvania is going to be a very important place. The Congresswoman talked about the lawsuits. Everyone who subscribes to the Contrarian, because we're owned by nobody, your paid subscriptions to our Contrarian Substack, and we want you to subscribe to our YouTube feed too. We've gone large tonight. We're going to have a lot more coming. Our subscribers support the litigation, over 100 cases that we've worked on, Katie and my other colleagues working tirelessly on this litigation. The litigation won't save us, but we won't be saved without the litigation. It's the combination court of law, court of public opinion. And what we're seeing now is footage in New York City, the people making their voices heard in the court of public opinion.
We always can count on New York, right, Ashley, to be able to step up and step out. New York's kind of in the epicenter of a lot of the good trouble protests that we have seen. And really, you know, it's not just the big cities, though. We aim for just even 1% of a population, and even in a smaller area, can make a difference because everybody's one voice can collectively come together and make a really big sound. Right, Ashley?
No, you're absolutely right. You know, my only concern, though, Katie, is, protest is a tactic, not a strategy. And Norm laid out some elements of the strategy. You've got to be in the court system pushing back. You got to be in the Congress pushing back. You got to be in the streets pushing back. All of these things have to work collectively together to have a big impact on the nation, to really continue to elevate the conscience of the nation and provoke the conscience of the nation about where we are with things. And you're right. I mean, we've seen these protests in red and blue states, in big and small towns, where people are just out in the streets concerned about where this nation is headed. And, and I happen to be one of those that is just, undeniably, concerned about where we're headed. And so I think my desire is that we keep moving and pushing in the streets, but that we take a step back and think about what's the broader strategy and how can we all support these lawsuits, support our members of Congress, support these organizations that are fighting on the ground, from ACLU to Planned Parenthood, et cetera, so that we're all collectively pushing together.
4 prongs to the Contrarian strategy. We call them the 4 Ps.
Norm. I'm always on message.
The 4 Ps, the 4 pistons of democracy. Court proceedings to lock and defend our Constitution, to protect it. Public protest, the 2nd P. That's what you're seeing on your screen today. The 3rd P is political leadership. That is essential. And we had that from the congressman and the congresswoman exemplified today. And then the 4th, it's coming. You can't save democracy without it. election polls. People got to show up not only in the streets, but they got to voice their votes and speak in favor of
Can
democracy.
I just ask you a quick question? What's your reaction to DOJ's decision today to go into these states and ask them for their election data? Is that not concerning to you, speaking of the polls?
It's deeply concerning, Ashley. And when Donald Trump tried this nonsense last time with his executive order on elections, he wants to make it harder for those who favor him, who are opposed to him, to vote, easier for those who favor him. We went right straight to court with the support of the Contrarians, and we got an injunction. So if Donald Trump thinks he can engage in these kinds of unconstitutional, illegal shenanigans, there's been about 200 court orders against him. Soon it's going to be 201.
Awesome.
I just want to quickly say that part of what we do at the Contrarian and a big part of why we're seeing these good trouble protests is we're channeling and we're activating the lawyers, because the rule of law is really what's going to carry us home. And all of this incredible energy that we're seeing that's happening across the United States, as Norm is saying, though, taking that and harnessing it and putting into our litigation strategy makes sense. The battles are being waged in the courthouses. They're being waged in the courts of public opinion as well. But as we know right now, being in court is making a difference. So I'm very proud that Norm and I and some talented people, along with our coalition partners at the ACLU and LULAC and other incredible places, that we're all collectively working together to be able to create our own version of good trouble, because that's exactly what we're doing in the courthouses.
Yes.
Ashley, bring us
Yes.
home with one last John Lewis story
Well,
to take everybody out.
For sure. So I was there when his casket was lying in the Capitol, and I left the Capitol late at night, and I saw a cat on the steps of the Capitol. And I've never seen an animal on the steps of the Capitol. And I called up Michael Collins, who was his longtime aide, who the Congresswoman was referring to. And I sent him the picture, and he said, "You won't believe it. That is one of the cats." Mr. Lewis had cats all surrounding his house on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. That cat traveled from Mr. Lewis's house to meet him and say goodbye on the steps of the Capitol. That is just the pull of this man. You know, people all over the world cheered, screamed when they were in his presence. He just really was a magnetic type of a leader. And anyway, so just seeing that cat on the steps, that just made me tear up and cry in a moment where we're all saying goodbye to Mr. Lewis. We all miss him desperately. But to your point, when we open this thing up, you see his spirit living on in the streets all across the country, living on in the courtroom through you and the Contrarians' efforts, and in the Congress today. So thank you for what you guys are doing. Thank you to everybody that's marching in the streets in honor of Mr. Lewis. There's nothing more important than us protecting the very founding principles of this nation and all of our interests. Thank you for having me, Norm.
Thanks, Ashley. It's been wonderful sharing this hour of celebrating the memory of John Lewis, of celebrating good trouble, of over 1,600 peaceful protests in defense and love of our Constitution around the country, sharing memories of John Lewis. He was a beautiful man. He taught us all so much. And I like to think that in our own small way over the past hour, we've carried forward that tradition of fighting with love, being first fighters. Thanks to Katie Phang and everybody else who joined us today, Jim Acosta, Brian Tyler Cohen, and the wonderful Congresswoman and everybody else. And most of all, to all of you Contrarians who are watching, please subscribe to our Contrarian YouTube channel. Subscribe to the Contrarian Substack. Be a part of making good trouble. It's the most unique bargain in journalism. You get wonderful coverage like you heard tonight, but because we're owned by nobody, all profits go to support that litigation in defense of our Constitution with love. Good night, Ashley.
All right. Thanks, Norm. You're amazing.
You too.
We will not stop. All of the forces of Eastland, Barnett, Wallace, and Thurman will not stop this revolution. If we do not get meaningful legislation out of this Congress, the time will come when we will not confine our marching to Washington. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. But we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today. By the forces of our demand, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up!